Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, it's the Metro, WDET's daily news and culture show. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the program, a recent report from the U.S. Surgeon General is warning Americans about the link between alcohol use and cancer.
But alcohol is so enmeshed in our culture. Many of us use it to celebrate, to connect, to relax.
So today, we'll think more deeply about alcohol use in Metro Detroit, and we'll talk about how your drinking habits are changing or not.
Also, the power of street art and murals can be transformative. They beautify our neighborhoods and increase our access to art.
We'll learn more about a mentorship program that's helping young muralists to cultivate their creativity. But first, how does inequality look in different parts of the world? Photographer Johnny Miller wanted to capture some of the common threads of inequality, how the lines that divide us from Cape Town to Detroit sometimes look strikingly similar. His project, Unequal Scenes, uses drones to capture aerial shots of cities worldwide. The images are bird's eye views of urban areas, and from these vantage points, the unequal distribution of wealth becomes painfully clear. In Manila, the capital of the Philippines, shiny, gleaming buildings soar over crumbling shacks and huts. In Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, pristine gated communities flank struggling slums. And here in Detroit, a brick barrier delineates the city limits from Grosse Pointe Park. The Grosse Pointe side is lush, well-manicured, and marked by stately homes. On the Detroit side, grass is overgrown, debris lines the street, and the buildings are dilapidated. So what lessons can we learn by viewing these images? Photographer Johnny Miller joins us now to discuss. Johnny, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, Robin. How are you? Thank you for allowing me to be on your program today.
So Unequal Scenes is the name of your photo project, and it's unique because it gives us a new lens to view inequality. Talk about how you came up with the idea.
Well, I'm American, but I've been living in Cape Town since 2012. And when I was there, I went to get a master's degree at the university in Cape Town. And one of the classes that I took, we studied how the cities during apartheid had been constructed to disenfranchise the various racial groups in South Africa. And so in 2016, I had a drone. I was one of not very many people in Cape Town that had a drone at the time. It was kind of an expensive piece of technology. And so a lot of people were using it to do tourism videos, kind of like beautiful Cape Town videos. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to look at one of these dividing lines? And I went to a place about 20 minutes south of where I lived, and there's a community in South Africa, we would call it a township, but it's essentially a slum. About 38,000 people lived in that particular slum, very low income area, and it was right next to a gated community with multi-million rand homes with an electric fence that surrounded the entire neighborhood. And so when I took that photo, kind of on a whim, to be perfectly honest, it went viral. And so I still find it a little funny that this whole project started from, my Facebook page, which had 200 likes on it, but someone shared it and it went viral. And millions now people have seen that photo and the other photos in the series. And I've continued the work since then.
I realize this photo project is unique because of that very reason, because it's a blend of art and activism that went viral. Johnny, I was thinking back to other recent examples of art-blended activism that's gone viral, like the art created after the murder of George Floyd. But your work wasn't tied to a specific event that captured the world like the murder of Floyd. So why do you think such an old thorny topic like inequality has drawn such massive interest and appeal?
I think inequality is something that everyone feels a relevance to. So even if you're on the wealthy side of the divide in my photos, you can feel a relevance. You can feel that you're somehow participating in whatever problem or whatever issue that I'm discussing. And there's a lot of people that have very strong opinions on whether or not they are in the wrong or whether this is natural. So I guess my opinion is that this project describes infrastructure as laid down by decisions that have been taken by people to disenfranchise other people. And that may have been more intentional or less intentional depending on the circumstance. But I think that it's really interesting being an American working in South Africa, which a lot of people thought initially I was South African. They didn't realize I was American. And then coming back and doing the project here and other wealthy countries, because this isn't a project just about the global South. It's not a project about poverty. It's a project about how we construct our world around us. You know, this, I don't believe this is natural. I don't believe that if you look at a photo of Masapumalele and Noordhoek in Cape Town with that yawning divide and all those shacks right next to the electric fence, or in Detroit, you know, there's, I'm looking at it now on my website. I have the Wall, and the Wall was a black and a white community in the 1960s that were constructed. And the only way that the white developer could get the money to construct his white neighborhood, this area, by the way, is all African-American now, was to construct a wall to separate the two. So, I mean, this kind of stuff happens all over the world. It's systemic. And I feel like I'm trying to provoke a conversation so that we can agree that what we're doing is at least complicit and at best wrong, so that we can take steps to correct it.
And in a few minutes, we're going to zoom in on Detroit. But for this moment, I'd like to actually zoom out and talk a little bit about your experiences abroad and how they've influenced this project. Your dad worked for the government, and that meant growing up you moved around every 3 or 4 years. And then you traveled on your own and you lived abroad, and you were living in Cape Town, South Africa, when you started this project. And that's where you're based now, as you've mentioned. How did your experiences traveling and living abroad inform this work?
Yeah, it was a very unique way to grow up. I've met a lot of people in America who have similar experiences. A lot of people, you know, are like army brats, for example, would be one term. My dad wasn't in the army, but he worked for NOAA. And I think I got used to quickly integrating into a place, seeing it as an outsider, and then leaving. And so when I moved to Cape Town, I really wanted to put down roots for the first time in my life. I turned 30 in Cape Town. I really wanted to stay there for a while and make a home. But I think that those early years of moving around so much allowed me to see things perhaps as an outsider sees them in a city where other people take things for granted. So in Cape Town, to give you an example, if you've never been there, there's fences and there's infrastructure and there's walls that separate. And this was a very insidious plan by the apartheid era government of the time to separate the wealthy from the poor. And in South Africa, that's a racial dynamic, 100%. So I can say white from black in the South African case, or white from colored, which is another racial group. And to see that from an outsider's perspective, I think allowed me to see the absurdity of how I was living every day, but then also this kind of creeping feeling that I was participating in it and it wasn't feeling as weird anymore. So after a couple of years, I started to feel like I'm starting to become a local here and I'm starting to not question these things anymore. So also, I guess the project was a response to that in the way that I wanted to interrogate my own way of seeing. You know, I wanted to sort of reclaim that freshness as an outsider of seeing these divisions, which were so apparent. And one of the strange/sad things that I get as comments on my Instagram posts, and one that I got on the very first post that went viral, was South Africans writing, "I never knew it looked this bad." That to me really summed up the idea that people had a habitualization or a habituation of their environment to such an extent that they didn't even realize it looked that bad in the world's most unequal country.
So you're seeing these places with your feet on the ground in an intimate way, places where you've lived, such as Cape Town, and then you're capturing these soaring aerial images that are shifting your understanding and other people's understanding of the places that they live or that they have maybe thought of in a certain way.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that it seems like a pretty easy concept for a photographer just to fly over and look straight down on some of these divides. But the way that the camera worked with the drone allowed a person without a helicopter to take that top-down photo cheaply and quickly. And so this project could spread very quickly around the world with a very small budget. And I think that that helped people see these divides in a way that was a little unusual compared to other previous incarnations of, let's call it, inequality type photo projects, which if you look at them, if you go back in time to, I don't know, any time in history where people are looking at inequality, a lot of times they're looking at poverty. And so there's extrapolating, there's a mental extrapolation that needs to happen from the viewer when you're looking at poverty to inequality. I think, and I hope, and potentially why this project has gone viral, is that when you look at it from the drone where you see the rich and the poor in the same photo, you get, like I said, that relevance to your own life. And by you, I'm obviously meaning like the wealthier side of people, of the communities that are looking at these photos. And that relevance, I think, does allow people to break that habituation of their daily lives and say, wow, I really live on the other side of the fence from people who have been disenfranchised either currently or in the past. Perhaps that influences my future decisions on, for example, voting on taxation or voting on a variety of other issues that could ameliorate the situation.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with photographer Johnny Miller about his project, Unequal Scenes, which is a collection of images from around the world that show inequality from a design, environmental, and architectural perspective. Now, Johnny, you're based in Cape Town, South Africa, but you have a Michigan connection. Your mom is from Saginaw, and your dad is from Redford. At what point did you start to understand the severe inequality in the Metro Detroit area, or was it always something you knew?
I would say that because of the stories that I heard from my father about how Detroit went through an arc from when my grandmother was born in Hamtramck to when she died, which was last year in Redford, I think that that life kind of sums up the arc of, let's call it the boom and the fall and the resurrection of Detroit. And I don't want to speak too grandiose about, the resurrection or the fall, but I mean, those are terms that have come up in popular culture that I've recognized. And so I've always been aware that there was, I don't want to call it inequality because that came later. I want to say that there was struggles in Detroit that fell along particular lines and boundaries that interested me and that interested my family. And I guess as a photographer, when I struck on this project, I finally had a tool to first visualize that to myself and then also to share that amongst other people. And so my dad doesn't live in Redford anymore, but the rest of my family does. They live in, for example, Plymouth and Milford now. And so when I go back down there, I can see it again through the eyes of someone who has already sort of touched these issues and researched these issues in other parts of the world, and then re-engage with their ideas of growing up there and see how they map onto one another or how they don't map onto one another. And I think this conversation is something that I hope other people are having in different cities that I've photographed also, but beyond Detroit, around the world, with their family. How is growing up in this city mapping onto your experience now or my experience growing up at a different point in time and now?
And Johnny, you touched on it a little bit, but I was very interested to hear your perspective about the idea of Detroit having this renaissance or this resurgence or this revival. You have the photographs, you have the pictures that you've chosen to include on the project. So I just want to know, what do you see?
That question is a tricky one because when you say revival, and generally speaking around the world, when people talk about revival, I should say when we have these conversations in mass media, we're talking about some sort of economic revival. And I guess the question is, how widespread is that revival and who's benefiting from it? So from what I understand, and again, I don't live in Detroit, although I am in Saginaw talking to you right now at my mom's house, is that Detroit has bounced back to the extent that property prices have risen, tax delinquencies have gone down, people have moved back into the center of the city. There's been sort of corridors that have opened up that are incredible in terms of a particular type of revival. Whether or not that's widespread to the people who have always been disenfranchised in Detroit, whoever those people may be, I'm not the person to ask that to, but I would guess that it's probably a mixed bag. So I think that the question of like how Detroit moves into the future is something that is similar in a lot of different cities as we approach, I don't know, whatever the 21st century is offering to us as sort of like the tech-enabled future cities of the world. Is that going to be shared across the populations equally? It doesn't really seem like we're on that track. So at least in America, I've noticed that the country seems to be moving more towards a less equitable mindset / economy / decisions being made in cities versus less. And that to me is a little bit depressing. So I don't know if that answers your question, and I'm probably not the person to ask it to, but that is a trend I've noticed around the world.
Yeah, and Johnny, you are a great person to ask this question because you've been photographing and looking at these differences and similarities across the globe, actually, of inequality. So can you describe one photo that stands out to you, especially as you were looking at the city of Detroit in this area?
Sure. Oh, just a quick point. I meant specifically as a subject matter expert of Detroit. I wouldn't be the right person to ask.
Yeah, Johnny.
But thank you for the compliment. Well, if you're looking at a photo, I mean, particularly of Detroit, I think what's really interesting to me, and Robin mentioned it earlier, was the difference in architecture, or I should say the separation that had been implemented in the architecture between Grosse Pointe Park and the Grosse Pointe section of Detroit. So the boundary line there on the east side of the city historically has always been a challenging one. If you look at the history of Grosse Pointe Park and Grosse Pointe, you'll see that Grosse Pointe Park used to be sort of a clubby, not invite only, but applicant only residential neighborhood, which had very restrictive covenants as to who could settle there. And Detroit, being a relatively African-American, actually overwhelmingly African-American city, always was an uneasy neighbor there. And so the infrastructure, and that's primarily what I'm looking at with the drone is infrastructure, by the way, is really interesting to me because there's brick walls that have been built in between streets, like right in the middle of the streets that separate on the borderline between the city and Grosse Pointe Park. There's brick walls that have been built to separate the primarily African-American part of Detroit from what at the time was primarily white part of Grosse Pointe Park. And if you look at a map, you'll see it's actually quite difficult. You can go through on Kercheval, but you can't go through on many other roads along that section of the boundary there because they're all blocked off. And it's not something that city planners did. It was something that residents did to prevent people from coming over. And those walls, you see that in Cape Town, you see that in Nairobi. I went to Cleveland, and there's a part of Cleveland, a neighborhood in Cleveland that's exactly the same, with brick walls that have been built in the middle of city streets to separate black and white neighborhoods in the 1960s. California, St. Louis, Missouri, all over America, along the boundary lines of redlining and various other types of disenfranchisements, you see this infrastructure, and we look at the Berlin Wall and we think it's so foreign and it's so horrible. We have the same exact walls in America. This isn't something that I think needs to make people feel hopeless or make people feel depressed. I think it should galvanize people that those walls were constructed by human beings, by Americans. We can tear them down as human beings, as Americans. It's just a question of will and a question of policy.
Johnny, this is Robin jumping back into the conversation here in the last minute that we have. We should acknowledge you needed drones to capture these scenes in Detroit and across the world. You're the co-founder of African Drone. That's a Pan-African organization that uses drones for good. What exactly does that mean?
Well, we want to encourage people to do similar work. So we want to encourage journalists. We want to encourage mapping experts, activists, and just the common person in Africa, where I'm based in South Africa, to use drones with our help for purposes of good. We obviously work against the stigma of drones as an agent of surveillance or of warfighting. We want to say that, drones can actually be used to very democratically and very at a low cost, see the world around us, map the world around us, and relate to other people what's going on. And we think that's really powerful. We've had some great successes. And if you want to learn more, it's africandrone.org is the website, and we'd love your support.
Photographer Johnny Miller's project Unequal Scenes gives us a lens into global inequality with aerial imagery of cities worldwide. Johnny, thanks so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
Coming up at 11, alcohol is a leading cause of preventable cancer, according to the United States Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. He wants labels on alcohol to include a warning to consumers to its links to cancer.
Alcohol plays such a big role in American culture. Almost anywhere you go, there's a bar or liquor store nearby. We want to hear what your relationship to alcohol looks like. Will the Surgeon General's announcement influence your drinking habits? Would a warning label make you think twice about buying that bottle of wine? Call and let us know. 313-577-1019.
Up next, the power of street art and murals can be transformative. They beautify our neighborhoods and increase our access to art. We'll learn about a mentorship program that's helping young muralists to cultivate their creativity. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay right there.
WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And no matter how you look at it, the beautification of Detroit's alleyways and building walls have helped change the perspective for visitors. But for native Detroiters, seeing walls adorned with art isn't new. It's just simply newly embraced. And the city aims to continue to embrace that artistry. The City Walls program, in collaboration with Space Lab Detroit, have selected 18 emerging artists to partake in its Detroit Artists Apprentice Program. The inaugural program, DAAP, will connect the 18 creatives with 6 experienced artists. And the goal is to nourish and grow Detroit's arts community. Mentors and mentees will work together throughout the entire year to create public works of art. Joining us now to chat more about the new program and its goals is Zach Meers. Meers leads the City of Detroit Blight Remediation Department, and Ijenia Cortez, a local multidisciplinary artist and one of the mentors. Welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, nice to be here.
Of course. So, Zach, we're going to bring you into the conversation first, starting out just giving us a little bit of a explainer. The city is really growing and establishing the community of artists that we have. How will this apprenticeship program add to the focus on your goal here?
Thanks for having us. And first, I just want to say thanks to Bethany Howard, our project manager extraordinaire. I would be remiss if I didn't mention her, but, the DAP program is a way for us to empower the Detroit Artists Network and to strengthen that network and to get folks who are sort of emerging or needing that opportunity to grow that scalable skill set. So there's so much more to painting a mural than just the painting itself. You have to do the logistics, interacting with the community and stakeholders and budgeting and renting and, there's a lot that goes into it that folks don't maybe, understand or maybe take for granted or whatever. So this is an opportunity to grow that knowledge base.
Yes, that's one of the things that we hear often, especially when we hear from the legacy artists here in the city of Detroit, is the gap between the knowledge of being a paid working artist versus actually just being an artist on the side. So, Zach, just sticking with you a little bit longer about the program itself, we talked a little bit about that right now, just filling in those gaps for those emerging artists. Can you talk about, since 2017, what it's been like to see this program grow?
Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah, we started in 2017 with a $50,000 budget, and there's a longer story that goes into how that all came about. But, we kind of gave an authentic effort to grow the program as we had the resources available and just do the maximum benefit that we could get. And what's interesting that you mentioned that is back in 2017, Ijenia was one of our first artists who was a mentee at the time to Sidney James, the great Sidney James, who was a mentor over on that viaduct on Brush. So now Ijenia is the mentor. So it's a little bit full circle. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
I mean, you were a mentee to Sidney G. James, which, I mean, if folks don't know who Sidney G. James is, I mean, she's like Sidney G. James, but she's one of the best muralists in the city of Detroit right now. She has the girl with the pearl earring, if everyone's familiar with that one. But just talk about being a mentee and now being a mentor.
Well, I think I began, muraling and art in general is, kind of a practice of exploration for myself. So I was always seeking out mentors. I was seeking out people who could help me, who could guide me, who could teach me. So it's a blessing to be able to find that. So now we fast forward into the future. I'm happy to give that back because I know how important it is to just know the little nuances of knowledge and the little small intricacies of being a muralist that people might not know.
And I always think, especially when we talk about becoming a mentor or teaching the next generation or bringing the next folks up, what does it feel like when you have that? Did you always think to yourself, I want to be a mentor, I want to help those coming up behind me, or did you just fall into it like a lot of us tend to do?
I actually do believe I fell into it. I think when you focus on what you want to do, things open up for you, and things are required of you with the more knowledge and experience you have. So it kind of just opened up, and I embrace everything that really comes to me as far as like furthering my career and helping further other people's careers.
Yeah. And Zach, we think about the mentors and mentees, and this is the first year for this program. It's going to be a year-long program. Each mentee and mentor group are going to receive $10,000 to expand this goal. So can we talk about how we're going to see that kind of distributed across the city?
Yeah. This is the first time that we'll be doing interior walls. So bringing the project inside. And most of the projects will be in publicly accessible spaces, police departments, fire departments, government buildings, maybe libraries. We really want to bridge that gap between some of these, public spaces that maybe folks don't access all the time, and maybe we'll bring some new folks in there and create that connection between people who maybe don't always meet at the same level. And so, it's going to be really exciting. The projects, like I said, are a little bit smaller, so that they are more digestible for the new artists. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, these skill sets are scalable. So once you know how to do it, maybe on a small scale, you can drop a giant wall like the Spirit over there on I think Mount Elliott.
Listen, I am directionally challenged. I won't even hold you up. I'm a former traffic reporter and still don't know how to read the roads.
And
Waleed.
Yeah. What's
it's on Mac.
Okay. All right. And Zach, once again, just bringing you back into this conversation, just keeping you here for a moment, the American Rescue Fund. So you talked a little bit about that $50,000 budget in 2017, getting it off the ground. What happens when the funding from the American Rescue, what happens when that goes away? How do you guys continue these programs?
Well, the City Walls program has additional funding through the general fund. So this program specifically, the DAP, is funded through ARPA. But, as our goal is like growing the arts community and seeing if we can create it, help it. It's already thriving. We just are trying to put a little salt on the steak in a sense. So, if it's really successful, which we anticipate that we will look at continuing to do that program. We think that these residencies, because we also have the BARP one, which is what we started, the Blight Abatement Artist Residency Program, which we started in 2017. We found that the residencies are really successful because folks get to grow as an artist, and they get to interact with us, and they get to interact with additional jobs. And so we look at those residencies projects really as a successful route or pathway.
Yeah. You're listening to The Metro on WDET-FM. I'm Tia Graham alongside Robin Vincent. We're chatting with Zach Meers with Detroit City Walls and Ijenia Cortez, a local multidisciplinary artist. And we're going to bring you back into it, Ijenia. You mentioned earlier that having mentors played an important role in your career. What is the most valuable pieces of advice you got from your mentors, especially Sydney?
I would say it's a lot of like on job learning. You know, I learned through a lot of observation and just taking things in. I think notes that I've taken is more so just from being around, but the things I know to do is just how to be professional, how to manage jobs at a certain scope, from the ones we're doing right now to even bigger things, how to work with clients. It's a lot of things that go into being a professional artist. If you want to be a professional artist, you know, there's a lot of misconception around what it means to be a professional artist. So,
in your opinion, what is that?
That there's a starving artist kind of a aesthetic, that art is not a career. The you know, the typical things that I think I've heard, you know, being in the city and being that I had to learn through self-taught, because I am a self-taught artist. So all these things I kind of had to figure out about the art world and about the muraling world, which they overlap. They're like a little Venn diagram. So just how to really handle yourself as a professional artist is the things that I've taken away, and that's the things I hope to, I guess, imbue into the people who I'm mentoring. So.
Yeah. And speaking of the people that you're mentoring, you have some folks underneath you. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what it's been like so far, kind of growing with them, learning how, interacting with them? You're still in this early stages. So
yeah, we're just getting started. So the interaction so far has been like very friendly. We're getting to know each other. I'm kind of observing people's styles and what they need. I'm more of a quiet leader. I lead from the back, so I don't really... I'm kind of letting them thrive. I already told them, like, I'm not a micromanager. I don't do things, but I am here to only further you and help you. So I think we've vibed, and everybody's been receptive, including myself. I'm always receptive to receiving and learning back. I think that's something that a lot of people, have trouble with. So it's like, not only am I teaching you guys about, them about the muraling business, but I'm trying to teach them how to, when they get in my position, how to handle people and how to react to people who are coming up, and to nurture and to be a light and to lift them up.
Yes, because that's one of the roles of artists, to lift folks up. But I also think about the role of art in activism, and your opinion in that, especially being in the city of Detroit, especially putting art up on walls that. In areas and in neighborhoods that are still blighted. We still see some murals in some blighted areas. So I want to, talk about that contrast and beautifying some of these spaces and what it means for you to beautify some of these spaces.
I see them, we say blight. I feel like it's less blight and more so underserved, forgotten, neglected, in the area at least. But the people who live there, they still have needs and they still have dreams and hopes and things. So muraling is a way for people to not only they can see outside of their neighborhood, it can stoke a curiosity of not only like, who did that, what's going on, and have people go down a rabbit hole of their own creativity. So I think it's important also to let people know that no matter where your neighborhood is and what the history of neighborhood, you're important in your neighborhood, and beautifying this neighborhood is important. This space is important, and you should be able to see yourself here. So that's what I try to do when I do mural.
And I always ask Detroiters what part of Detroit they're from when they come on the show. So what part are you from?
I'm a mix. So I grew up between Highland Park, which is, it's technically not the city of Detroit, but it is Detroit. It's smack dab in the middle of Detroit. Mm-hmm. So Highland Park, and then my father lived by the city airport on the east side on Flanders. So I'm a little bit of east and west. I'm all over the city. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, which helps inform you so much with the work that you get to do with murals and art. Mm-hmm. But Zach, bringing you back into this, since 2017, the city reports nearly 300 pieces of public art. Can you just talk about what you look forward to doing within the next few years or even the next decade or so with this particular program, especially DAP program, but then just city art and city walls?
Yeah, I think like something that I always think about is what you see influences how you see. So like, going into the neighborhoods and putting the murals all over the city and focusing on being citywide and not just specifically in one area or whatever, and encouraging a diverse group of artists to participate. The more the merrier. It's a bit of a wayfinding thing where, like, it's not just where you're going, but where you are, and to recognize the authentic feeling when you're there. And so this artwork is what really helps folks to understand that. And for the city walls, for DAP and even moving forward, we don't really, the city walls role is to not curate content. We want to curate the connection. And so we'll set the framework up and we'll build the project out. And then once we have folks on board to execute it, we let them do it. We're there to help, but we're always excited to see what happens. We're not trying to tell anybody how or what we want to see. We want to see you guys take control of the project on your own and thrive. So we just look forward to more of that.
All righty. Zach Meers leads the City of Detroit Blight Remediation Department. Ijenia Cortez is a local multidisciplinary, thank you, artist and mentor. This year, expect to see more art throughout the city of Detroit, Detroit's Arts Apprentice Program. Thank you both so much for joining us on the Metro. We look forward to seeing all the art that comes up in public spaces throughout the year.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up at 11, the United States Surgeon General reports that alcohol is linked to 7 different kinds of cancer. But we know drinking is a big part of American life. So we want to hear what your relationship with alcohol looks like. Will the Surgeon General's announcement influence your drinking habits? Have you already cut back or cut alcohol out altogether? Call in and let us know. The number is 313-577-1019.
Up next, Detroit has a new director of Detroit's Department of Transportation. How will he improve the city's bus service to meet the needs of riders? That's next on the Metro. Stay with us. On WDET, I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. DDOT is not where riders need it to be right now. Detroit's buses are often late and there aren't enough stops for residents. Simply put, it's really hard to rely exclusively on Detroit's public buses to get you around the city. The department itself has also had problems. During the pandemic, ridership declined, bus drivers quit, and there's been high leadership turnover as 4 different directors have been in charge of the department since 2018. Now, that doesn't mean there haven't been positive developments. In recent years, rapid transit routes were introduced along Woodward, Gratiot, and Michigan Avenue. New hydrogen and electric buses are being added to the roads, and a new transit center was built at the State Fairgrounds. More change came to the department this week to DDOT as Robert Cramer officially became its latest director. So, how does he plan to lead the department and ensure buses are running on time? To discuss that, we're going directly to the source. We have Director Cramer with us. Director Robert Cramer, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So, before joining DDOT, you managed the People Mover for 2.5 years. Your work included technology upgrades and a free fare program. What did you learn from that experience, and how will it help you in this role leading DDOT?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing I would say I learned from the People Mover experience is just reinforcing the idea that the people at these organizations, the People Mover and now at DDOT, are really critical to our mission. And there's just an incredible amount of pride and energy and just willingness to do better every day. And I think that it's clear, and even before I was at the People Mover, I was at SMART, another complementary transit agency. And all of those agencies play different but similar roles and really impact thousands of people's lives every day, in addition to the communities that they serve as well. So we have no lack of motivation that the work we're doing is important. But I think that's the biggest thing from the People Mover that I learned is that really encouraging, supporting, and really being there to motivate the team is something that can really make a big difference.
Let's talk about this willingness to do better. Let's look at some of the good when it comes to DDOT. The previous director, Michael Staley, added more bus drivers, more clean buses, hydrogen and electric, and helped to open the Jason Hargrove Transit Center, which offers warm and dry shelter, and that's at the former state grounds. So talk about how you plan to build upon that work beyond that motivation that you're hoping to imbue on your team.
Yeah, I think, Director Staley and the other directors before each played a role in kind of how we got to where we are today. Nothing in transit happens fast, and really, kind of similar to the overarching. I'm going to go back to the overarching things because I think that's really what's important to keep in mind. Not only for the public, but especially for all of the staff, the team members who make that happen every day. So, for example, really just focusing on making the service safe and reliable. So all of those other amenities are very important, but I think really getting back to the core of if the residents can really count on the service, I think that's the most important place to start. And then from there, back to your opening comments, talking about, it's not something that a lot of people feel like they can count on. That's the biggest thing to improve first. And then once you have that, now you've got a solid base. Okay, people can count on it. Now when we start adding more service or adding different amenities, now they know, hey, this is something that we can continue to use and have be part of our daily lives.
How do you how do you build upon that reliability when it's at quite a low point?
Yeah, we've made some pretty good improvements. So our on-time performance is pretty close to 80%, which is kind of that's in the neighborhood of kind of what's acceptable nationwide, I would say, for transit. And that's something that we'll really continue to focus on. And I think that, again, just like everything takes a long time in transit, that's something that people have to experience to believe. We can say, oh, well, our number is this or our number is that. But when people see, hey, I went to the bus stop, schedule said it should be there at a certain time, and it showed up. That's a good place to start. And just reminding the team, and I know I want to make sure that none of this comes across as saying that this is something that, DDOT doesn't already know. But just reinforcing that on a daily basis, I think, is really important because each one of those times, if we have one missed trip, one missed butt, that's impacting potentially dozens of people.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in addition to improving reliability, we have to also talk a little bit more deeply about safety and how DDOT is planning to prioritize the safety of those who use its buses.
Yeah, and I think during the pandemic, there was barriers installed on all the buses because safety is, I'm going to say, a three-pronged approach when it comes to transit. You've got the passengers, of course, that's the one that's the easiest for everyone to understand. But you also have the public around the buses, right? So you want to make sure that the buses are operating safely, also that they're protected from other drivers or actors that could hit the bus or whatever. But really what is, I think, kind of overlooked sometimes, but it's very important, it came up at different times during the pandemic, is really the drivers, the transit operators. They're the professionals behind the bus. I've said before from my time at Smart 2 that is really one of the most difficult jobs you can imagine. There's a lot of pros to it, too, if that's something that, if you get the right person in that role, it can be great. You have a lot of independence. You're interacting with the people that you're serving every day, but you're also out there on your own and really 24/7. And so that's something that really, from an organization, from DDOT, we need to make sure that we can support our operators and make sure that they're safe as well as the passengers they're transporting.
I think about that often when I pass buses on the roads, how difficult of a job those bus drivers have. But the bus driver who hit and killed a woman downtown in June 2023 had a history of collisions. Did that change processes? Are drivers being screened more thoroughly?
Well, it's only my third day, so
I just got here.
I'm not
from what you
in.
know. Okay.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into that too, as far as how you screen and monitor the drivers. Like you said, it's a really a challenging position, and it's something that really, between the equipment on board, the road supervision. These are staff that are out there kind of supporting the drivers and also supporting the passengers as well. It's really, there's just a ton of people that go into making that happen. And there's just an incredible number of drivers, operators that are just expert professionals. Hold them up against any operators in the country. And the biggest thing for that is that they really care about what they do, and really, it's during COVID. I know at Smart, again, different agency, but same area. Drivers would get very frustrated when for a while there was capacity restrictions based on COVID spacing. Drivers would get angry that they would have to pass somebody up because they're like, I know that this person now is going to be, they're going to miss their doctor's appointment. They're going to miss their job. They're going to miss, they're going to get to visit with their family that much longer. The drivers really care. And so really it's our job. I consider, the administration, we're the support staff for the drivers and the mechanics, right? So it's our job to make sure we can support them any way we can so that they can deliver the service.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with Robert Cramer, the new director of Detroit's Department of Transportation. We're talking about the changes he hopes to make to DDOT. And like you said, this is only your third day. You just got here. But DDOT needs to compete with your former employer, Smart, our suburban transit system, and other bus services in the suburbs that have more money to spend on bus drivers. So we're talking about you all being in support of the bus drivers. How do you deal with the challenge of not having the same funds for the drivers as other bus services have?
Well, that's another deep question, right? I mean, that's why y'all are here. You're good at what you do, and this is something I'm sure that a lot of people are thinking about too, in addition to our drivers, of course. So it's part of a process. There's going to be different factors that go into that. No matter who the employer is, there's different benefits, there's different circumstances and stuff. What I've really noticed, again, even when I was at Smart, is that at DDOT, just like at Smart, there's an incredible amount of pride too. And so in a lot of cases, this is something that they feel very passionate about doing, which is always a good thing when you're at a job, is to have it be something that you like to do. So we'll continue to do whatever we can to support them, make sure we can communicate those challenges and also opportunities. But really, think about it less of competing with, but really supplementing or complementing some of the other services. Even with the Q line, the People Mover, Smart, DDOT, the RTA has 2 services that they're operating out of downtown. Transit Windsor, although maybe they're going to be cutting back on that. But there's just a lot of, it's really a community and kind of all of the above. And so really, in my role at DDOT, I'll continue to push the idea that we're here to support each other as transit providers because we all have the same mission.
And I love that you brought up the RTA because as we've been discussing, you used to work with Smart. You talked about this community-based regional transit idea, I guess, but the RTA millage didn't pass once in 2018, which would have expanded regional transit. Of course, you know that. Do you plan to work with Smart and other transit agencies and political groups to expand public transit, not just in Detroit, but all over Southeast Michigan? You kind of just hit on that, but if you could just briefly let us know how you plan to do that.
Well, I think, our day-to-day is really how can we work together as operators. So I think even the People Mover, which I still have kind of a role there too, even with the People Mover, there's an opportunity for more collaboration, but really just helping to support each other. All of the transit agencies could use more funding. It could do more with more. But I think really, just upping our coordination and figuring out ways to make sure that the rider experience is the best, whether it's on one system or if their trip requires 3. That's what we should all be focused on, is really the rider experience.
Yeah,
yep.
And just, being from the city of Detroit, thinking about all of thinking about public transit in general, and hearing you talk about the People Mover, it's been only in recent years that I've heard about the People Mover in the way that I have. So can you talk about the marketing there of getting that push to get folks using the People Mover, but then how you plan to market public bus service to Detroiters who've been here for a while?
I think so maybe back to the first question about what did I learn at the People Mover, is that really thinking about the rider experience, the customer experience, almost from a hospitality standpoint, is a really important way, because that's the way you can start to build some of that. There's a lot of ways, but that's a really important way, I think, to build, and that's with service reliability, technology, figuring out what it is that make people less likely or less willing to think about using transit, whatever it is, People Mover or the bus, can drive. Okay, are there improvements we can make? Is there customer service training? Are there amenities, technology? Those are things that all are driven, but the goal is how can we make the customer experience the best? And I think then that gives you, it presents itself, let's say, when it comes to marketing materials, because people are excited to talk about it. And that's the biggest thing with the People Mover, is that once they use it, they love it. For whatever reason, they're like, oh, I don't know, I've never really used it. But once they use it, though, they're like, this is great.
It is a fun experience if you've never ridden a People Mover before. I did it a few times in high school for the first time, and I thought to myself, this is cooler than I thought. So Thank you so much. Robert Cramer is the new director for Detroit's Department of Transportation. Director Cramer, we will have you back on the Metro.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Coming up at 11, the United States Surgeon General says alcohol is linked to 7 different kinds of cancer. Will this influence your drinking habits? Call us 313-577-1019.
We'll be right back. It's the Metro.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Welcome back to the Metro for the second hour of the program, where we dig deeper into culture and daily life. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And think about any place you go to socialize or do some sort of activity. A concert, dinner party, or maybe you just go to an outdoor festival. No matter the event, you can typically find some sort of alcoholic beverage to drink. When it's cold outside, it may seem like a burden to get out the house. Bars and restaurants entice you with holiday-themed cocktails and hot toddies to keep you warm. And on hot days, hot summer days, when the roar of the crowd in Comerica Park is restored, there's always that one voice that cuts through the noise to remind you to get your ice-cold beer. Alcohol is so deeply woven in our culture, and today we want to explore whether we should reassess how much we should indulge in it. Because drinking alcohol, it is bad for your health. It's been well documented that it can cause liver disease, but we're starting to learn more about how harmful it really is.
Indeed, we are. According to the United States Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, alcohol is a leading cause of preventable cancer. It contributes to nearly 100,000 cases and 20,000 deaths each year. That's higher than the number of deaths caused by drunk driving. But less than half of Americans know this. They don't know that drinking alcohol could lead to cancer. So to increase awareness, the Surgeon General wants to add a warning label to alcohol that highlights its links to cancer. What does this mean for the social drinker? We've got some of those people in the studio with us right now. Joining us are producers Sam Corey and Carrie Jr. II. They're here to kick off this second hour. Hi, Sam and Corey.
Great to be here. How you doing?
So there's a lot to unpack from the scientific side that we'll get into with our guests. I want to start by talking about how this info might affect all of our lives.
Yes.
So, Sam, let's start with you. Do you drink alcohol? And if so, how often? Sit here on the therapist couch and tell me.
I do. Great place to be. As y'all know, I'm a very social person, and
No, I don't know that.
and I drink socially. I don't normally drink like at home alone, but like when I go out with friends, I'll definitely have a beer or two, and I'd say once, maybe twice a month, I'll get a little turnt. I'll get a little drunk.
Just once or twice a month, Sam?
I mean, that's like the shot and the beer, kind of thing, and maybe another shot.
How do you feel after this, Sam?
Wow, you really turned on the therapy session. I feel great. I don't really feel great.
And therein lies the problem.
Wait, once or twice a month?
Once or twice a month, I get, like pretty drunk.
Okay.
But like I drink a couple times a week, I'd say. Like, because I see people at least a couple times a week.
Is that how it happens? You're like out and about and you're like engaging with friends? Do you ever do like a little sip at home?
It's pretty rare. I really don't drink at home very much.
Okay,
It's actually not very alluring. But like with other people, it's very nice. It's just it's a nice little social lubricant.
Mm-hmm.
And Carrie, similar. What
about me?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm going to be the kind of boring grandpa of the group here. I probably drink, it might be once or twice a month for me.
Oh, wow.
It's not very often I drink. Well, see, the thing is, I'm a very tall person. And so when I go out, I like cocktail bars when I do go. And I'm a dark drinker. I'm like a whiskey kind of guy. But when I go out, you got to pay for every drink. And it takes a bit for me to really be like, okay, this was worth the effort. So now I just kind of, I'll just sit and do one drink or two, and I'll go every week or so. It's
That's
not really
so interesting.
that often.
I get drunk so fast because I'm smaller. I'm a lot smaller. I never think about this.
It takes a lot. So not very often. And it's, I don't know. I feel like after the college years too, I kind of got it all out, like all the let's get, turnt. And, now I'm like, I don't need to do all that anymore. I just do a little sip here and there. And then I use my natural energy and all that stuff to get me going and socializing.
Well, Robin, I don't know if you're a grandma in this situation.
It looks like I'm going to have to leave the studio now because I am feeling that I can't follow that one. There's just a little bit too much of a contrast there between Carrie and me.
A little bit more. You lean towards Sam a little bit more.
Yes.
All right. Come to the dark side.
I hang out here on the dark side with Sam Corey. I think that I have tended to enjoy alcohol to celebrate, to relax and disconnect. Going back to therapy mode, I have ADHD, and I have been told before, this is therapist speak, that sometimes people with ADHD, or not sometimes, oftentimes, they engage in dopamine-seeking behavior. And one of those dopamine-seeking behaviors can be alcohol. And so I am aware of that, and I do try to be cognizant of my drinking because of that, because it hits that dopamine lever for me in a very strong way. What about you, Tia?
Well, listening to all you all talk, no, I do occasionally throughout the week. I might have like a drink or two at home when I'm cooking dinner, a hot toddy at night,
Keeps you warm.
Yeah. We have someone here at the station, WDT's Russ McNamara, who does really good limoncellos, and you just add that to, a tea or something like that. Hot. It's really, really good. So I do something like that, light, maybe a glass of wine, maybe. And then I'm like Sam, on every, on the weekends, every once in a while, maybe once or twice a month.
You got to turn up.
Yeah, I got to turn up. Just got to release and dance. And that's what I usually use my alcoholic consumption for dancing and going out for those type of situations. But usually throughout the week, I'm not drinking too much, a hot toddy, a glass of wine.
That's nice. That seems like a nice way to
I'm
wind down a
wasting
little
more
bit.
bottles of wine than I'm actually consuming the whole bottle. So you know what I mean? So it's like I'm not as consistent as, but I'm drinking it every once in a while. So, yeah.
So then would you say that your relationship with alcohol is healthy?
I would say it is now. So growing, I would say in college, just like Carrie referred to, those college years, I went to a party school. I graduated from Michigan State University.
That's a party school?
Who would have thought?
Go
who
green, go
would have
white.
thought? I mean, and I had no idea. but I get to state in East Lansing, and there it is, booze everywhere all the time. So then in college, of course, I think a lot of us, especially if you engaged in drinking in college, we kind of overconsumed, we overindulged a little bit in school. Definitely had some nights I would not like to revisit. Or remember. But now I would say it's a much better relationship with alcohol. I respect it a little bit more. I understand what it could do or can do to me and the health risks. So I would say that now my relationship's a little bit healthier.
Okay.
Robin, how about you?
It is healthier. It's become healthier with age, but it's still something that I struggle with because I think it's very much still ingrained in my mind that alcohol is this great thing to, that it's, as we talked about the other day, Sam, a social lubricant, that it's something to use, again, during these celebratory occasions or to unwind. And so I'm working to make some disassociations with alcohol when it comes to those things.
And I know Sammy, our resident drinker here. Sammy,
I guess so. I've taken up the mantle. I'm okay. I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm all right with that.
Yeah, but no, Sam. Like, what would you say your relationship has been like, especially since your early 20s to now, with alcohol?
Yeah, I think it's part of the culture. It's like binge drinking is part of the college culture, and so I definitely lean pretty heavily into that. It certainly slowed down. I will say this is important. I don't know about y'all, but my family is really into drinking. They love beer. So
that makes it problematic. Every time there's like a family get together, if there's alcohol around, you don't want to be.
So we're doing it. Yeah, we're doing it. And I'll be honest, I love it. Like I'm not pushing back. I'm not like we shouldn't. I'm like heck yeah, like let's have some fun. Let's go. So. It's slowed down, but I am susceptible to peer pressure, and I love hanging out with people. So I will say I dance a lot in the dancing scene. It's actually not a lot of in the Latin dancing scene. There's not a lot of drinking because people are like actually like focusing on their moves, and you don't want to get too thrown off. But going out with friends, going to bars, like there's not that many places to go. There's not many places to socialize. So bars, that's where that's a big spot.
I mean, I feel like my relationship's pretty solid with alcohol. I don't have much to say on it. I never really think I overindulged. I never really loved it that much either. But now I'm just like, I'll take it when I need it, and for the most part, don't need to spend too much time on it.
It sounds like you have like no relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. That's kind of what I'd say.
Oh, it's so interesting.
Wow, yeah.
So interesting. You're listening to the Metro on WDET. We're reacting to the recent announcement from Surgeon General that alcohol is linked to several cancers. We want to hear from you on this topic. Our number is 313-577-1019. Now, will this advisory influence any of your drinking habits? I find this one particularly interesting question because, Robin, you were the one who you were like, hey, we've known for years this is something that's been happening. Yeah. So can you talk about what it means for you?
Yeah, I've been following integrative physicians and researchers on social media who've been sounding the alarm for several years. And it's funny, I think about the first time I approached my mom with this information and she was like, oh, stop. Like, ugh. And she's not a big drinker herself, but she enjoys a glass of wine. And during family functions, that glass of wine is there and maybe gets refilled. And so, yeah, she was a little bit irritated with me. And then the Surgeon General's report came out and I held back from doing an I told you so sort of thing. But I will say that what this, the Surgeon General's report does for me is puts the nails in the coffin, so to speak, when it comes to my relationship with drinking. I was a little bit in denial. Like, I know that this is very bad. I know that there's research out there, but it's still not a part of the mainstream public consciousness. And now I think it's going to be with the Surgeon General's report, and that is giving me sort of a come to Jesus moment. Tia, what about you? Is this going to influence your drinking habits?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, just like you, it's one of those come to Jesus moments. It's like, oh man, we've already known, like just like when we are eating with the non-stick pans or coated things, it's like, we know what this is doing. We should stop, but blah, 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 blah. But this one is really, again, like we have to figure out healthier ways to have relationship with alcohol, or maybe see what this means going forward with the new data and research. But we all have to come to the conclusion and understanding that this is a cancer-causing product that's being sold to us and we're consuming. So it's just something that I think we need to at least have that warning there so folks know and they can at least choose for themselves.
Right. Make more informed decisions.
Yeah.
Sam?
Well, I gotta ask you, Robin. Are you going to cut it out entirely? What's going to happen?
I'm cutting it out for this month. And I will say that I've gone long periods of time without drinking, and I've never regretted that. I've gone several months, up to, I'd say, 6 months not drinking, just to kind of see how it would feel. And the longer I would go, the better I would feel, I guess. And the less interesting alcohol would become, and the more I would figure out ways to alternate and do other things.
That's so interesting. Even when you're out with friends.
Yes, but this was during a time where I lived in places where, like, instead of going to the bar, you could go on a hike in the mountains. So gotta get more creative.
Especially in Michigan in the winter. Got to get creative about what we can do. All righty then. Well, I want to say thank you to Sam Corey and Carrie Jr. II for your time and for sharing your thoughts on this topic. We will talk with you all soon.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up, we'll speak with an oncologist about alcohol and its impacts on our health. Plus, we'll hear from you. Call us at 313-577-1019 and let us know where you stand. Maybe you drink less alcohol than you once did. Whatever you feel, we'd like to hear it.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Tia Graham with Robin Vincent, and we are reassessing our drinking habits to hopefully be a little healthier.
Maybe a little, Tia. And we're taking your calls. Maybe you drink less alcohol than you once did. Whatever you feel, we'd like to hear it. 313-577-1019. Joining us now is Dr. Mohammed Najib Al-Halik. He's a professor of oncology at Wayne State University. Dr. Al-Halik, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you so much.
So the Surgeon General issued a report that highlights how widespread alcohol consumption is in the U.S., and he explains how alcohol is a leading cause of preventable cancers. For many, this may be news, but as an oncologist, you've been seeing how harmful alcohol can be. When did scientific research really start to uncover the effects of alcohol and the links between alcohol and cancer?
Yes, I do treat mainly GI cancers. That's like colon cancer, rectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, liver cancer. So 90% of my patients cancer caused by alcohol. So I see that every day. I see the effect on alcohol on their health every day. So it is a very close topic to me. So we learned about the cancer-causing alcohol since the 1980s. We knew about that since then. However, years and years of research and observational trials and prospective trials have been performed over the past 30 years that confirmed to us that signal, and especially for those 7 cancers that the Surgeon General highlighted, including the cancers I treat, the GI cancers, and of course the breast cancer, the most common cancer in the world. However, after a very large trial that was run between 1990 until 2016, imagine, all of this data has analyzed
26 years?
2016. So,
yes, 36?
Yes, from 1990
26,
until
okay.
2016. And then they published those results in 2018 at a very respected journal called The Lancet.
Yep.
This is that trial, or this is the prospective study that showed us the true risk or in numbers, okay, of those 7 cancers and how the alcohol played a significant role in causing those cancers.
I wonder if you could talk about the interactions that you have with your patients and what they tell you about the struggles of kicking alcohol, even if perhaps they're still really sick. I mean, you said 90% of the patients that you see have cancer caused by alcohol, and this is gastrointestinal cancers.
Yes. You'll be surprised. First, those 90% of the patients that the cancer that they have is linked to alcohol. You'll be surprised to know they are not a heavy drinkers that people label the heavy drinking. They're just the usual daily drinker, social drinkers. We call it a weekend, drinking. So it's not like, how people think, because they drink a lot. They drink a lot. No, it's actually not. It's when I ask them, do you drink heavily? They say no. I drink on 2 over the weekend, or maybe a drink every day. When I come back home after work, I'll have a beer every day. So this is the population that I see. So I do agree with the report of the general surgeon that it is really not just like heavy drinkers. Even what we call a moderate drinker, okay, also has that increased risk of those cancers.
So we're talking about, and this aligns with the report. Correct. That just that one drink per day is going to increase your risk for cancer. Would you say significantly?
It is significantly. Even one drink a day will increase your cancer risk significantly. And the data is very interesting. If you go over the data, like 180,000 cases caused by just a drink a day, imagine. So that's really high. This is the global numbers of, Europe and United States and Canada. It's not just us, of course. In the United States here, we learned that 100,000 cases caused by cancer cases caused by the alcohol. And unfortunately, that year, 20,000 patients died from cancer caused by alcohol. So those are really huge numbers. And it's interesting if you think about also the numbers of life we're losing with this. So the statistics show that patients that die from cancer caused by alcohol, they die 15 years earlier than their projected age of death without having the alcohol causing cancer for them. And the statistics show that just in 1 year, you're losing 300,000 years of life for just 1 year. So the number is big, guys. The number is really huge. And this is why, the advisory doesn't come for a simple thing. It really comes when there is a pandemic, a big thing coming, right? Losing lives, affecting lives. Even if you don't lose your life for cancer, it will change your life forever. Just having cancer, even if it's curable cancer, it will change your life forever.
I wonder if it matters what kind of alcohol you're drinking, if there are some that are more harmful than others.
It's all about the pure alcohol that's in the drink and the amount of that. So the standard drink that we call standard drink will have 14 grams of that pure alcohol. And that's a 5 fluid ounce of wine. That's a 12 ounce of beer, and about 1.5 fluid ounce of hard liquor. That's what a standard drink. When we say a drink per week or drink per day, that's the standard. So more than that, of course, you are increasing your risk of drinking. And it's interesting that the WHO, the World Health Organization, put a statement in December of 2022 saying that there is no really minimal amount of alcohol that's safe for your health.
Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yes. Seeing what I see every day in my practice, yes, I do. I do agree with that.
Let's go to the phones. Billy in Lathrop Village. How will the Surgeon General's warning against alcohol affect your drinking?
Well, it's affecting me in 2 ways. If I'm a beer consumer, which I am, as well as mixed drinks, I watch the content on the ingredients label. For well over 3 decades, they've been really using substandard material in alcohol. Perfect example, wheat that's being sprayed by Roundup. If you want pure beer, you have to go drink German beer because they adhere to the purity laws. And also the consumption, you have to limit your consumption. That's what I'm doing.
Dr. Hollick, does the quality of ingredients, would you say, affect cancer risk?
I'm not expert in that part. No, I can tell you the second statement. I do agree with it, limiting the amount of alcohol, minimizing the amount. That's what I would agree with, definitely. It will be, of course, a goal for us after this advisory to work on that, increase the awareness. I was so surprised to see that the statistics show only 45% of the U.S. population are aware that cancer is caused by alcohol. In contrast with asbestos, right. In contrast with tobacco, 90% of the population in the United States, they are convinced that asbestos and tobacco causes cancer, but only 45% are convinced that alcohol can cause cancer.
So there's a lot of public awareness campaigns that need to happen now. Billy, thank you so much for calling in. You're listening to The Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're talking with Wayne State professor and oncologist Dr. Mohammed Al-Halak about alcohol's impact on our health. Let us know your thoughts, too. Give us a call, 313-577-1019. And just listening to the things that you've been saying, Dr. Al-Halak, there are so many different questions I have, especially when you're talking with your patients. So I'm wondering, especially when we see these connections, and we're going to get a little inside baseball here, but I want to know, how are you all finding that connection, that correlation between alcohol and the presentation of cancer cells? Are we seeing, in what ways are you linking those two?
It takes years for alcohol to cause cancer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why people say, why now? Why now we know about this? If we learned about this link since 1980s, and you wait that long to tell us that it's definitive now, well, because it takes actually time for cancer to happen after the alcohol, repetitive injury and damage the DNA of the cells, the chronic inflammation that the alcohol will cause, that will cause what we call an oxidative reaction inside the tissue, and it takes 10 to 20 years of latency before we see that. So remember I studied that, I told you, the observational study that was started in 1990 until 2016 to conclude, right? They needed to, all those years, to observe all those patients' behavior of drinking, documenting that, and then seeing how many of those will develop cancer, and put this documentation. It took that many years to develop the cancer. So as far as me, every day, of course, I mean, when I see my patients, of course, first time I ask them, how is your habit of, alcohol drinking? Because they ask me all the time when they come, why me? Why I get this cancer? And then I was like, okay, let's talk about that. Of course, there are genetic risks associated with cancer. Those are really no more than 5%. People think it's always genetic, it's always in my family. It's really not. There's genetic risk that you inherit. That's about 5-7% of the time. Maybe if we were generous, 10%. There is what I call, a family risks, but not a inherited risk. Means you're living with your siblings and your mother and your father. You eat the same food, right? That has whatever additives and preservatives. This is what. If you're like today, I saw, unfortunately, only 42-year-old with esophageal cancer. Okay, this patient, of course, a drinker. But what's sad is his brother just literally 2 months ago died from the same cancer, and his mom with him today. He's depressed. His mom is depressed. She's losing her second son to the same cancer. But my point is this really genetic, inherited? Or is it really the behavior that they shared, the food they ate, right? The alcohol consumption, the smoking. This is like that risk that I talk about. And again, I told you, most of my patients with those cancers, they are not a heavy, like you call them, a heavy drinkers that are having addiction, right? Those are the patients we think they're going to get the cancer. They're really not the majority of them that are in that scenario, that the addiction and going to the AAs and etc. No, it's not actually. It's the usual normal life kind of drinker.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier as well, when we get to the point that where we are now with an advisory and possible warning label, it's a pandemic level. We're at a pandemic level, so being at this level now to where we have to really put an effort to inform the public about what's going on with alcohol and its link to cancer, it is causing cancer. Can you talk about how we got to the pandemic level now to where we need to start to, because you talked a little bit about it as well with asbestos and tobacco, but we're here now. So let's talk about where we are.
Well, the numbers are concerning.
Yeah.
The numbers of cases that we see United States, 100,000 per year of cancers caused by alcohol is a high number. You're talking about preventable 100,000 cases that we actually should not see them if we control, right, the alcohol consumption in the United States, and 20,000 loss that every year we're having. It's just hard for the general public to understand those numbers unless you really come to us and work with us and see those patients, see the life of those patients, how the life will change when you get that cancer. Like this mother I told you about her, right? With her son today. I'm trying to convince him to even seek treatment. He's just depressed. He's feeling that it's my end and I'm not going to do treatment. My brother just died from the same thing. And I'm convincing him to start the treatment, for this, the immunotherapy, maybe the radiation a little bit, maybe some chemo. I told him when you get stronger, but he's even too weak now to even do the treatment.
Yeah. And, once again, this building on some of the things that we've been talking about, and especially it being a pandemic and it really being this something that 45% of Americans, only 45% of Americans know. I was one of those folks who didn't know about the cancer causing the cancer that alcohol causes. So now we know alcohol can be harmful to our liver as well, and so many other places. Can you briefly remind folks of any other health risks we should consider when we talk about alcohol?
Of course, the heart disease, heart failure, atrial fibrillation. That's an abnormal rhythm in the heart, very common in the United States. I used to see it when I used to do my internal medicine training before the oncology. A lot of patients come to us with this abnormal rhythm where their heart, they call it skip a beat, right? It's actually because your heart is too fast. We call this fibrillation. The heart will fibrillate. It's directly linked to the alcohol toxic effect. Heart disease, heart failure, diabetes actually linked also to alcohol, and so many other things. Of course, metabolic disease, we talked about cirrhosis, right? The liver being damaged and scarred up from drinking alcohol. And I don't want people just to think this is this has happened only, if I'm, drinking so heavily. No, you will be surprised. We have really a high number of cirrhosis that's linked to the alcohol that people think it's not due to alcohol. It's due to what we call the NASH or the steatohepatitis, the fatty liver disease, right? Well, by itself is not usually, by itself is not enough in a young patient to cause liver cirrhosis. So it's a combination of that fatty liver disease with the alcohol consumption that both of them damages that liver and causes the cirrhosis. And after the cirrhosis, of course, comes the liver cancer. Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to get back to the phones right now. We have Jeremiah. What do you make of the Surgeon General's warning about alcohol?
Well, yes. I'm 67 years old, and I've probably been drinking pretty much all my life on an occasional basis, more so when I was young. But I would like the doctor to address, yes, we do understand the chemical effects that it has on the body. We've probably had that understanding for quite some time now in our society. But exactly, perhaps maybe he could address the psychological dependence on alcohol. At one time I was a smoker, and I haven't touched a cigarette now in over 30 years. But the psychological effect was, you have a cigarette when you get up in the morning with your coffee, when you have a break at work, and or when you're sitting at the bar having a drink. And the difficulty for me was, how am I going to get along without that cigarette? It was kind of a psychological issue. When you go to social events, it's kind of ingrained in our behavior to have a drink, and that's something that sometimes is more difficult to overcome than just physical abstinence, So is there a relationship there with psychologically? We do understand the chemical aspects, but could he address that from that standpoint?
Jeremiah, thank you so much for calling us on the Metro this morning. And Dr. Al-Halik, what's your response there?
He's very correct. Thanks, Jeremiah, first, and congrats for quitting smoking. 35 years. This is really amazing. I'm trying to make my brother quit smoking. He's in Dubai. I try hard with him, and he is the same thing exactly. He changed from the regular cigarettes to those whatever cigarettes that they put in a machine, just to have that feeling of something, as you said, in his fingers, and seeing the smoke coming out of it. Yeah. Same thing. So same thing with alcohol. You are correct. The psychological effect of having that drink in your hand, every night on a social. This needs a lot of work, of course. Needs a lot of education, a lot of programs, education and mental health. We have this, social or cultural idea that if you're stressed out, you drink. If you're sad, you drink. You want to just ease it up, right? You drink 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks until you knock out, and then wake up the next morning, go to work. Okay, so this needs to change. Instead of doing that, seek help, right? We need, to strengthen our mental health. Work with therapists, try to overcome that aspect. Learn how to deal with it. Because drinking that night is not going to solve the problem, right? You'll just probably forget that night, and then it's going to come to you again the next weekend. Whatever stress in your life. But try to learn how to face it, learn how to solve it. Drinking, as I said, with the sports events. This is a major problem we have in the country. That we need to work on. It's a public health, it needs the Congress to work and give us some guidance with the public health, of course, the NIH to address those and how we're going to deal with it. Some call for working on limiting the availability, the time of drinking. Work with the college kids, right? This is when it starts usually. They come, we're now in an age of drinking, okay, so, parties and heavy drinking and completely not controlled during the college. So those are a lot of things that we need to work on, culturally, socially, mental health. It needs a lot of work, and it's collaborative work, and I'm glad, Jeremiah, you're bringing this up on the radio.
You're listening to the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking to Wayne State professor and oncologist Dr. Mohammed Al-Halik about alcohol's impact on our health. And we're having this conversation because the Surgeon General wants to add a warning label to alcohol that it causes cancer. But Congress has to make that happen. Dr. Al-Halik, how effective do you think labeling like that could be?
It's part of the education that we need to have. I think it will be effective. I'm not saying it will be effective to, significantly reduce the amount of alcohol drinking, because whoever gets to drink that bottle, for example, will drink it. But reading this over and over, like how we did with cigarettes, in cigarettes it was very effective. People still smoke. Right, but when they smoke, they know. Like my brother, he knows that he's exposing his life to risk of cancer, lung cancer, heart disease, etc. Right, but that guilt is actually helping him to work on stopping, working on limiting as much as possible. I want to quit. That guilt actually helps you at the end. The current label that is on the bottles of alcohol in the United States. That's mandated by the government. The label is very simple. It just says that, according to the general surgeon, women should not drink alcoholic beverages during pregnancy because of the possibility of causing birth defects. And then the second thing is the consumption of alcohol beverages will impair your ability to drive a car or operate machinery and may cause health problems. This needs to be will cause cancer, okay? And causes cancer, something, and mention those cancers, to be affirmative. And the label needs to be more visible. It's not very visible in a lot of drinks. They are usually transparent. People don't see it. So we need to work on that. Again, the 45% needs to go to 90%, and I'm sure with that, once we increase the awareness, people will start, that guilt will start to reducing the amount of drinking on a daily basis. The social drinkers also will reduce it. The daily drinkers will reduce it to a weekend. This is how it starts. It's a gradual. The same way, right? We reach to that point, we're going to have to take another probably 10 to 20 years to reach a point where how we reach now with the cigarettes.
So as the label stands now, if I'm reading it and thinking, well, I'm not pregnant and I won't be operating a motor vehicle, I guess this is okay for me right now. Do you think that if the labels were to mirror what we see on cigarette packs, let's say in 20 years, is it possible, do you envision a world where alcohol is has the same social stigma that cigarettes in America have?
If we work hard on it, yes, we will reach there. Now we cannot smoke everywhere, right? Like if someone wants to smoke, hard time to find an area to smoke. So that actually is helping, not to go and buy just, a 2-3 packs of cigarettes per day. You're probably like whoever's smoking now is having hard times, smoking probably a pack a week if he's busy working and, want to support his family, cannot really leave every time his work and go outside to the designated area of smoking. So yes, label, again, working on the social behavior, limiting the places where you can drink, time, talking about the stadiums, right? Sports, stadiums, that's a huge problem, right? That we just, let everybody drink whatever you want there, all okay, and we don't think about later. All those young folks that go to the, with their family, that, that either they drink or they see, their family drinking, then it's okay, right? That culture builds in your mind that it's okay then, to go and drink heavily during the sports event, and between that, daily drinking, then it's okay.
We have to find other ways to root on the Lions and the Pistons. Let's go back to the phones. Harry in Waterford, what are your thoughts on the Surgeon General's warning?
This is Harry from Westland.
Westland. Hi. Sorry about that.
No worries. So I have a question. To me, there seems a little bit of a disconnect in what the doctor was saying. I would have assumed that people that were the heaviest drinkers would have the highest percentage of cancer, but the doctor seems to be saying that that's not the case, that it's moderate drinkers seems to be the majority, and I would think that I don't understand why it's not that way. I'm not saying that it's not toxic and those people aren't getting, but it would seem to me that if the more you drink, the more chances, the more dangerous it would be.
Harry, thank you for calling in, Dr. Alhalik. I'll have you respond there and clarify for us.
So the higher the drinks per day, the higher the chance of cancer. I am telling you, like when you go to work in a clinic, okay, with all those cancer patients, and you see what's the drinking behavior in those patients, because most of the people drink moderately. This is the population, the largest population that you have. Let's say United States as just an example here. The largest population are the moderate drinkers. So then this is where those cases are coming with cancer, right? That's the largest number of cases, okay? No, but true, if all of those drink heavier, okay, than what they're drinking, we'll have way more cancer cases, of course, in the United States. But this is the reality of, like, if you take a population in any country and you look at them, you will see that the outliers are the heavy drinkers, and the other outliers are the social drinkers, the minimal drinkers, and in between, it's like a bill, right? In between are the moderate drinkers. So the largest population are the moderate drinkers. This is where most of the cases are coming from, those, okay? But if you only take just the high drinkers only and see how many of them will get cancer, it will be high compared to the moderate drinkers. That's how, like, statistics, if you want to think about it and understand it. Okay, so but definitely true. Like, for example, here the advisory also mentioned that the higher alcohol consumption increases breast cancer, for example, for women. If the woman drinks less than 1 drink per week, the possibility of having breast cancer is 11%. If the woman drinks 1 drink a day, and now we know what it is a drink here in the United States, the risk is 13%. And if she drinks 2 drinks a day, 15%. So see, 11, 13, 15. So minimal drinker is 11% chance of breast cancer. That's why I say the WHO even stated that nothing called is a safe minimal alcohol drinking for your health.
Dr. Alhalik, I want to try and end on a positive note here if possible. You treat patients who have cancers that often have low survival rates, and that is gastrointestinal cancers. So it sounds like we really need to focus on prevention here, and that it's not too late to really change your habits and to try and prevent yourself from developing cancer from drinking.
It's very correct. You'll be surprised that 90% of my patients that the alcohol caused their cancer, they actually quit after they learned about their diagnosis. Very small number of them will continue to drink despite the cancer. And when they really usually have a social events, really like once a year, if anything, like a family gathering on a Thanksgiving, they really wanted me to approve for them that one drink of wine for that event to just socialize. And I usually say, yes, okay, of course. They worked hard, of course, all this year, to beat this cancer. But again, before that, let's prevent the cancer from happening. We don't want you to have the cancer and then you quit drinking, okay? We want to prevent those cancers, those 100,000 cases per year that we can prevent. We want to prevent them. We want to see this number coming down to zero if possible, which probably could be an impossible. But let's talk about like a minimal number of those, because we cannot eliminate completely, of course, the cancer caused by alcohol if the alcohol is still available. But we want to minimize it so we don't see that many cancer cases.
I just want to add one more thing. This is Tia Graham jumping in really quickly. I just want to add other solutions as well. With cigarettes, we saw the, moving the smoking area away from the buildings to help kind of reduce that. As well, we've seen cigarettes, the prices go up extremely. They were really, really high. My mom was a smoker as well. She stopped. She's been almost 10 years, I believe my mom's quit smoking now. So I just think about the price increase and everything that helped curb folks away and get them away from smoking. What does that look like in your opinion for alcohol?
That's actually one of the voices that's coming now from the public health leaders, increasing the, as you say, the price, tax more on the alcohol, increase the tax, so people like this will increase the price without increasing the price, But this will limit, of course, not everybody from doing it. I'm not saying we should really that's the aim, because if you aim to prohibit,
we know about prohibition.
We know what happened, right? Exactly. This is not the right way. The right way is do it in the right way. That you as a person, you limit because you understand there is a risk from that, and you limit the use. And if you use it, not too often, then just stop. Preserve your life. In 15 years, you're losing again if you get cancer from this.
Dr. Mohammed Najib Alhalik is a professor of oncology at Wayne State University. Dr. Alhalik, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up on the Metro, we will continue our conversation about alcohol consumption and the Surgeon General's warning. We'll be right back. Stay right there.
Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham, and we are joined by Carrie Jr. II in the studio to recap the conversation we just had with Dr. Mohammed Alhalik. So considering what we know about alcohol consumption now, especially listening to Dr. Alhalik, has it changed your perspective at all or your ideas on drinking? Carrie, you're already not much of a drinker, so What did it do for you?
I mean, it kind of solidified my practice. I mean, I'm not someone who's like, I'm going to cut it out completely and never do it ever again. But I've already felt like when you drink alcohol and you drink enough in one night, you feel it change you a little bit. You get a little bit more social, And I always felt like that feeling was off, like I wasn't my organic self. So that kind of already made me a little bit aversive towards it. Like, no, I don't think this is, we already know it's a little bit it's toxic to some level. So no, I wouldn't say it's changed, but I think it's solidified. Some of what you said at the beginning of this conversation, Robin, what I thought about it before. I probably just, maybe that'll go from 2 times a month to 1 time a month.
Interesting.
Maybe.
It made me think about the idea of drinking and partying and putting those two together and like what it means. Like you said, going out and being genuinely yourself. I'm a little bit socially awkward, so I use alcohol as a little cushion to kind of break me out of my shell a little bit when I'm out and about. So just trying to figure, I know it seems like I'm not, but I most of the time it's just me being awkward in a corner somewhere. So
your awkwardness is so beautiful. I love it so much.
You, Robin,
so
but it's definitely awkward.
I think you can wave that flag everywhere.
But so I use it as a little cushion. So it makes me think a little bit differently about how I present myself or even how I interact, and maybe just figure out some ways that I can like calm myself before I go into a situation versus using alcohol to use it as a cushion there. So very, very interesting. Yeah, Robin, what about you?
It sounds like you have some experiments to do. Sorry, I know you asked me about me, but I'm thinking about some things that have helped me disassociate alcohol from celebrating and fun events. And for me, that's meant going to parties, going to concerts, going to different events that I always associated with alcohol, and just enjoying sobriety and seeing what that's like. And it's actually been a very fun experience. I stay more on top of my game than everyone else. I remember exactly what happened. I have a crystal clear memory. And so I'm reminding myself right now, honestly, of those times. And I'm going to be putting those times into my back pocket and bringing them out.
Oh, man. And once again, thinking about just exploring the non-alcoholic beverage options and moving forward with that idea. What do we see? What do we think about this movement? Carrie, going to start with you, the non-alcoholic movement.
Well, I mean, I just think mocktails, Dry January, having a social group where you don't have to drink is a good idea. I think that's beautiful. I don't like having to feel like I need to go purchase a $15, $18 drink every time I go to socialize. So if I can do it without it, I think that's great.
I like how you increase the price. Not 12. I'll give you just 20.
I mean, that's how they be rising.
And Robin, same thing. Habits, thoughts on an advisory?
I hope to see that advisory.
Yeah. Soon. I hope to see it really, really soon. And I hope within 20 years that we are on track with smoking in this country. But that is it for us. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us on this side of the mic once again to wrap this conversation up.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Y'all did a great job.
And tomorrow is President Jimmy Carter's state funeral. WDET will air NPR's live special coverage from 9:30 to noon. So sadly, there will be no Metro on Thursday, but we will talk again on Friday.
This is WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Have a great day.
See you tomorrow or the next day.